my goodness. Thank you, Ken, other honorees, ladies and gentlemen, for that wonderful warm welcome tonight. And Rich, my goodness, how can I ever thank you enough for those beautiful words of introduction? And New Direction, wasn't that wonderful? Oh, my goodness. Another hand for the New Direction. You know, I chose Rich Trumka to be my presenter tonight because I have a very warm spot in my heart for him, and I cherish his friendship. I love him too. And Mrs. Trumka, I'm so glad you're here tonight, and I hope that's okay with you. Oh, and my goodness, how this evening has touched my heart. So many friends I love and admire, the treasured comments on the screens, and of course, this William O. Douglas Award. As Douglas himself once said, the liberties of none are safe unless the liberties of all are protected. Throughout his life, he went against the grain. He spoke for those who could not speak for themselves. He led from his heart, qualities common to our best leaders from whatever political corner they have come. It's a tremendous honor, ladies and gentlemen, to be counted in the company of all the past honorees. Bill Clinton's eloquence at this dinner 2 years ago brought to mind words he said that Bob and I both wish we had said. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of president. Humor aside, despite coming from a different political place, both Bob Dole, who ran against Bill Clinton, and Elizabeth Dole, who ran to succeed him, consider him a friend. Now back to Rich, who headed the United Mine Workers, as you've heard, when I served as George H.W. Bush's Secretary of Labor. And I have a little more to add about the story that he told. I'd been on the job only, I think about, well, it was just very briefly, when I decided to go to Southwest Virginia to see the mines, to see what could be done about an 11-month miners' strike against the Pittston Coal Company. It was a strike that now ranks as the biggest industrial action of the 1980s and the 1990s. And I was told that talks had been tried, that mediation had been tried again and again. Everything had been tried. It was a loser, and I should stay away from it. I went anyway. There was deep bitterness, and it was tearing families apart. It was tearing communities apart. I ended up inviting Rich and Pittston President Paul Douglas to meet in my office the next day. Before the meeting, I consulted a trusted expert on human relations, my mother. She said, "You know, dear, I just find that sometimes breaking bread together is a good idea when you're trying to resolve a particularly serious disagreement," which this was. The meeting was scheduled then for late morning. Though each sincerely wanted to achieve an agreement, I can't say that either Rich or Paul was happy to be in the same room. But after an hour or so, Rich asked, "May I have some more coffee?" And I said, "Well, you know something, it's getting close to lunchtime. How about a sandwich in the secretary's little dining room, which was just off my office?" And what do you know? The sandwiches were already laid out with glasses of wine for each of us. Once we'd sat down, I raised my glass and asked these two smoldering giants of their industry to join me in a toast to the resolution of the coal strike. Well, what could they do? My glass was in the air. So they raised theirs. Soon we had agreed on a super mediator. You heard it was former Secretary of Labor Bill Ussery. And after intense negotiations throughout the Christmas holidays, the settlement was achieved on New Year's Eve, and strikers soon returned to work. My point here is that you can always find common ground when you're working for the common good. In this case, a Republican Secretary of Labor was collaborating with the AFL-CIO, something that seems a bit against the grain in today's divisive political environment. That, my friends, is what needs to change. Ladies and gentlemen, I've learned a little something over 40 years of public service. I've learned it through the incredible people I've been so honored to work with throughout my career, and the inspiring experiences we've had serving the public together. First, it's so important to find your passions, your mission fields. Second, major breakthroughs occur by encouraging collaboration, leveraging existing resources, breaking down silos, investing in innovation, and shining a light on success. This evening, we're shining a light on an example of great success, Public Counsel. Over the last 42 years, Public Counsel has recruited and trained countless volunteers and delivered nearly $500 million in free assistance to those who need it the most. Last year alone, as we've heard, with the help of over 5,000 pro bono attorneys and volunteers, many of you in this room, I imagine, the organization assisted tens of thousands of individuals, nonprofits, and small businesses. And it was done through rich collaborations, innovation, and targeted programs, and by breaking down silos all over the place. With the increasing pressures we're all feeling in a growing global marketplace, dealing with rapid changes in technology and communications, and facing increasingly divisive political discourse, the Public Counsel way is not always the easy way, but it is the right way. I came to Washington in the mid-1960s to join the Johnson administration. Yes, I was a Democrat at the time. At what was then called the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Remember that? My job was to plan and carry out the first national conference on education of the deaf. I decided to devote my evenings, though, to representing the disadvantaged, doing it like Public Counsel's attorneys, pro bono. Before volunteering, I needed to attend night court to learn my way around the courtroom, since I had not taken trial practice in law school. I wanted to help people who couldn't afford an attorney, but I had to be sure I was ready. Well, the third night, a case came up that required a trial. A homeless man had climbed the fence in the lions area at the National Zoo to pet a lion. Don't ask me how he kept his hand. No public defender was on duty that evening, so the judge looked around the courtroom for a lawyer to take the case, and he spied me. "I've seen you here the past 3 nights," he said. "Who are you? What's your name? What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm observing, Your Honor," I replied, "so that I can take cases for indigents." "Come up here, I have a case for you." It was a commandment. He was a bit of a curmudgeon. No, I'm not ready. I'm still observing," I said. "Are you a member of the D.C. Bar Association?" "Yes, sir, I am." "Then come up here, you're ready," he said. I had just a few seconds to decide what to do, so I went up and he handed me the information slip. And as luck would have it, I had 1 hour to prepare for trial. Though I had a law degree, I had never even seen a trial before, except on Perry Mason. And the assistant U.S. attorney assigned to the case turned out to be the top graduate from my law school class, editor of the Harvard Law Review. But I did have one thing going for me, the law, which said that it was illegal to annoy or tease the animals in the National Zoo. It was William O. Douglas who once said that common sense often makes good law. "Your Honor," I argued at trial, "without the lion here as a witness, how do you know if he was annoyed or teased?" I won. I knew you'd like that one. The next evening, I passed the judge in the courthouse hall. And as he walked by me, he muttered in this deep, gruff voice, "Not bad for the first time out of the box." As I understand it, fighting for indigent victims of fraud and abuse is the hallmark of Public Counsel's oldest project, the Consumer Law Project. Again, Public Counsel is doing it the right way, working across the region in collaboration with diverse community organizations, leveraging existing resources, and bringing Public Counsel's innovative programs to bear. I was a member of the Federal Trade Commission in the 1970s when we learned that rip-off artists were perverting a provision of contract law that enables businesses to sell their accounts receivable. These shysters were using this provision to force buyers of products that were never delivered or turned out to be shoddy to still pay in full. Low-income Americans were the particular targets of these scams. The Federal Trade Commission went to work, and the 1975 Holder in Due Course rule was born, protecting the rights of the consumer. The North Carolina Law Review described the Commission's actions saying, "In one stroke of their pen, the FTC did what Congress would have feared to do, what the courts could do only piecemeal, and what state legislatures had refused to do." We did it the Public Counsel way, coming together to work passionately for the common good. The American Bar Association recently called Public Counsel a force for good. Good doesn't always come easy, though, does it? That reminds me of another passion of mine, safety. In my days as President Reagan's transportation secretary, my superb team and I were pushing for airbags in cars, state safety belt laws, since usage was only 13% and no state had a law, and setting the national minimum drinking age at 21 years old. Now, mind you, I was taking 3 major legislative and regulatory proposals to a president who was trying to deregulate American society. I remember on the drinking age, for example, telling the president about blood borders, where kids would drive to a neighbor's state with a lower drinking age, never making it home again. "Elizabeth, you're telling me a lot of kids are dying and we can really do something about it?" he asked. "Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm saying," I replied. Without a moment's hesitation, Ronald Reagan responded, "Then let's go for it." All 3 initiatives were enacted in the same week in July 1984. We were successful on these fronts because we collaborated with effective organizations like the National Safety Council and Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We leveraged both sides of the political aisle in gaining leadership support from Senators Lautenberg and Lugar, and we broke down silos across the automotive industry, insisting, as has been proved, that safety does sell cars and that it is not an added burden. Of course, we wanted to increase safety in all modes of transportation. For example, we applied random drug testing for those holding safety and security positions like air traffic controllers and railroad inspectors. No civilian agency had done this before. Senior staff were included, and I thought it was important that we included the Secretary's office. Well, at the senior staff meeting where I announced this, our general counsel told me we were going to have mutiny if we went through with this. My own secretary stood up, and she announced there was no way that she was going to take that little cup and take it into the bathroom. No way. When the random call-ups came, my secretary was the first one called. I've mentioned the teams I've been privileged to work with along the way. They've made all the difference in reaching quantum breakthroughs. Public Counsel leverages the volunteer talents of top lawyers from 40 states, in-house counsel from major multinational corporations, students from 30 law schools, architects, and many other professionals. Combined with the recognized talents of their in-house staff, this is an excellent example of the organization's ability to leverage existing resources and form effective collaborations. Now, at the American Red Cross, we needed a transformative breakthrough for the staff and the tens of thousands of volunteers who passionately support providing half of America's blood supply. But truth be told, the Red Cross was operating a World War II system for collecting, testing, and distributing that blood supply. It was imperative that we establish standard operating procedures for all blood regions and operating units. So we shut down existing labs and we built best-in-the-world modern ones. We did it together, collaborating with private companies to raise resources, pushing innovation every step of the way, and shining a light on the success of the team and volunteers, ensuring that blood is safe to give and safe to get. And every way I look at Public Counsel, I see an organization that has a passion for its mission fields and a history of success in achieving breakthroughs. It's the kind of organization I can imagine partnering with. In starting a new foundation 2 years ago, my goal was another kind of breakthrough on behalf of America's hidden heroes who care for our wounded warriors. My husband was wounded, as some of you know, in World War II. I love him devotedly. I admire him enormously. I learned early on the heroic inner strength it had taken to overcome his injuries. He had spent 3 years in hospitals where doctors first thought he would not survive. Then they didn't think that he would walk again. He did, of course, but 8 additional operations failed to repair his shattered shoulder and right arm. When we were dating, Bob and I used to go to North Carolina to visit with my parents. And one morning, unbeknownst to me, he left his bedroom and he went down to the kitchen where Mother was fixing breakfast. He had a towel over the arm and shoulder that had been disabled in the war. "Mrs. Hanford," he said to my mother, "I think you ought to see my problem." Mother said, "Bob, that is not a problem. That's a badge of honor." I'm sure you can imagine why she was such a strong, loving force in my life. 3 years ago, Bob spent 11 months in Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington. I spent much of those months with him, becoming a caregiver myself, and I saw so many others tending to loved ones recovering from the horrific wounds of our current war, the longest period of fighting in our nation's history. I saw a wife sleeping on a makeshift pallet next to her husband's bedside. I watched a mother tape Bible verses to the walls of her son's hospital room for inspiration and encouragement. And my goodness, a father who was keeping vigil over his son night and day, his paralyzed son. I saw so much devotion, so much courage, so much love. I learned about the stress on families and the effects on children. And I learned that these parents, wives, husbands, and other loved ones had enormous needs of their own with little to no systemic support. And once they return home from the hospital, the challenges of tending to multiple wounds and illnesses are incredible. The caregiver, night and day, often the only person knowledgeable, trusted, and available. And some literally bathing, feeding, and dressing the loved one every single day. Many must maintain emotional stability, manage medications, and rehab. And they're handling the family's financial and legal matters. Some of them so young, they don't know much about these matters. And often they're raising children as well. My foundation strives to raise awareness of the caregiver's challenges, commissioning RAND Corporation to produce the first ever comprehensive evidence-based research on their needs, to collaborate with companies and nonprofits, and where possible, the government, to carry out the solutions that RAND will recommend early next year, and to sponsor innovations that address the obvious glaring gaps in services while the RAND research is underway. We know that this is a societal problem that will require a national response, a national strategy, if you will. That means it will take a large coalition to truly make a difference. Now, I've talked a lot about breakthroughs, and I think we're pretty much in sync on how public counsel goes about accomplishing them, right? Well then, why not do it together? Public counsel has already achieved distinction for the work through the Center for Veterans Advancement. Countless veterans and their families are benefiting from the diverse pro bono services in 40 states, as we've heard, across the country, making a huge impact at a critical time as our servicemen and women return home. And now, this evening, I am proud to announce a new breakthrough, a partnership that brings together 3 incredibly effective organizations to provide invaluable legal services and support to military and veteran caregivers across America who desperately need help the most. These organizations are Public Counsel, the Military Officers Association of America, and the American Bar Association. Yes. This partnership is an example of what my foundation represents. It's what we're all about, bringing good people and good organizations together to lift up and support America's hidden heroes. Specifically, the partnership will create a virtual one-stop shop serving the specialized legal needs of military and veteran caregivers. This collaborative will be the first of its kind in the country, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope it will serve as a national model for the coordination and delivery of legal services to a critical population that up to this point has not received the attention and support it deserves. Ladies and gentlemen, most importantly, this means that the wives, husbands, mothers, fathers, and loved ones who are working so hard, and here they have the biggest financial burdens of becoming instant caregivers. We hope they'll struggle a little less, knowing that they can count on pro bono legal services. My foundation is honored to have brought these 3 entities together. This collaborative is part of the national response that I mentioned, the national strategy, which I suggested is going to be necessary if we're going to be successful. I'd like to recognize those involved in making this partnership possible. And I want to ask you to hold your applause until I finish my list. Representing Public Counsel, Hernan Vera and Rick Little, please stand. Jim Carmen of the Military Officers Association of America, please take a bow. Let's recognize the American Bar Association's Paul Freeze. From Public Counsel, Tracy Rice and her team. Where are you, Tracy? Please take a bow. Come on out. And from my foundation, Melinda Ferris deserves great credit, and Gia Colombraro. Will you please both stand? Now let's give them all a huge round of applause. I've talked about William O. Douglas tonight. I often quote the words of another great justice, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Let me share what he said to fellow Civil War veterans in 1884. Through our great good fortune in our youth, our hearts were touched with fire. It was given to us to learn at the outset that life is a profound and passionate thing. A profound and passionate thing. That is the meaning of the task we are undertaking together. That is why I feel the greatest honor given me tonight is the opportunity to join forces with these 3 great organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. God bless each and every one of you. God bless this great land of the free, America. Thank you.